Welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small,
Why, hey there. Welcome back. Welcome to episode 204 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. I thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know there's lots of choices out there when it comes to podcasting and marketing and business podcasts, so I really do appreciate you making my podcast one of them, and I have a pretty awesome episode for you for tuning in. But more about that in a sec. If you are enjoying this podcast, then I would simply love for you to take a screenshot and share it on your socials and tag me, because I would like to get to know you a little bit better as well. And plus, that'd be just super cool for us to connect on socials. Of course, you can see all the show notes for this particular podcast at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/204. And before we get started on today's episode, how'd you go with last week's episode 203. If you didn't listen into that one, then when you're finished here, head back or slip back there and get even more small business made simple gold. But on to today's episode. Today, I have an extra special guest, I have to say. In fact, I have a really special guest, because my guest today comes from the Australian Taxation Office. Yep, some people might think you've made it when the tax office comes onto your podcast. I actually have an amazing representative of the Australian Taxation Office today, because we've got something pretty cool that's new, that's coming up, and it's going to help make your business life simpler, which of course, as you know, I'm all about. My podcast has actually been lucky enough to be included as part of E-Invoicing Week. What is E-Invoicing, did I hear you ask? I'm so glad you asked, because today Tash Bowett is on to tell us what it is, what it is not, and heads up, it isn't invoicing via email. So make sure you listen in to find out what e-invoicing actually is, and also listen in to how it's going to make your business life simpler. I met Tash at a speaking event I had earlier this year, and the taxation office was actually an exhibitor at. We got talking, and because I'm all about making business life simpler, which is why I called my podcast what I called it, we agreed that it would make a great conversation for you to listen into. So let's do that. Let's have a chat about e-invoicing on E-Invoicing Week and how it is going to help you in your business. Here's Tash. Natasha, I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today and talk about a subject that I know is going to improve the lives of small business owners, which is kind of what my podcast is all about. So welcome.
Thanks, Jen. Great to, I was going to say see you, but I can't see you. I can hear you. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
We've had some camera issues, but that's okay. That's all good. All good.
The wonders of modern technology.
Or the unwonders of it. Absolutely.
Indeed.
Natasha, for my amazing audience who perhaps haven't come across you before, can you tell me a little bit about what you do and your role?
Happily. I work for the Australian Taxation Office, which usually elicits interesting reactions. People usually go pale when I mention that. But I'm currently working on a project called E-Invoicing. This is a project that it's a government initiative around supporting small businesses in running their businesses better and more safely. I am the small business engagement manager, which sounds, quite impressive, but much more glamorous than it actually is. But what I'm lucky enough to do is work with small businesses and their trusted advisors, such as their bookkeepers and their accountants, to raise their awareness of e-invoicing Eventually with the hope that they will actually make the switch from the way that they are invoicing today to e-invoicing itself.
Yeah, so it's e-invoicing that I wanted to chat with you about today. And I'm super excited that, I've got someone from the taxation office willing to come and talk to my small business audience about this. But we actually met at an event we both were attending back in March. And you had a stall that was all about this e-invoicing that caught my eye. And I guess, as we talk today, you'll talk about what it's not, but it's kind of what it's not that probably caught my eye the most, in that it wasn't just sending an invoice over an electronic thing. But maybe for my audience, could you explain to us what is e-invoicing?
Fantastic. Great questions, Jen. And I think before I answer those, I just wanted to talk a little bit about email scams, given the amount of media attention that they've been attracting at the moment. I think once I've given this little bit of context, particularly around security, it's going to help your listeners understand how e-invoicing will help them better and more safely run their businesses. How does that sound?
It sounds great, because they are a little bit rife at the moment. Between those and text messages that are scams, they're a bit rife. So
absolutely. Great. Well, and no doubt you've heard about just this eye-watering increase in email scams, particularly around, for businesses that are targeting businesses. And one of those most common types of email scam, particularly that are sort of impacting businesses, is known as false billing. Now, according to, and I've got some scary figures here, according to the ACCC, false billing was the second biggest scam in Australia last year, with a whopping $227 million lost, with 60% of businesses that fell victim actually being small and medium businesses across Australia. So some daunting, very sobering figures. We're only in the middle of 2022, and already almost $10 million has been lost to false billing scams. Jen, one of those, there's a whole range of false billing scams, but the most common is known as business impersonation scams. I don't know if you and your listeners have heard of these, but this is when scammers impersonate a business's known supplier. They send a genuine looking invoice by email requesting an upcoming payment. And this is the dodgy part, but with the bank details having been changed, which of course results often in the unwitting business paying those monies into a fraudulent account. And this ugly reality was really reinforced to me just in the last few weeks, when I actually met with a number of bookkeepers here in Canberra. And they told me that they and their clients had actually been targeted by a number of business impersonation scams, with a couple of their clients only just realizing in time before they mistakenly paid those fraudulent invoices, which I think sets up the conversation that I think really around e-invoicing. And you asked the question, what is e-invoicing? E-invoicing is the new standardized way to exchange invoice information between a buyer and supplier's accounting systems via a secure network, irrespective of what software they're using. So as an example, Jen, you could be using a popular accounting software product. I won't name any names. I could be using a different accounting product. I will be able to send you an e-invoice, even though we are using different types of software via a secure network that those accounting software providers have built into their software. So for small businesses, it's basically a new digital channel to send and receive their invoices within their software. In terms of some of the benefits, what does this mean? Well, obviously, with it coming directly into your software, this is going to remove the need for you, as someone who's receiving an invoice, to manually data enter all of that invoice information into your accounting software product because it's come automatically into your software. And of course, this is going to save you time, and it's going to eliminate some of those mistakes that are often caused by rekeying that information into your software. And it's those mistakes that take time to correct and ultimately delay payment. E-invoicing works using data, not PDF files and email. And I'm going to sort of leave a dramatic pause there to once again iterate. So because this is going to be coming from my accounting software into your accounting software, you can see immediately there is no emailed PDF invoices. And once you remove the email, as I've already touched on, this is obviously going to minimize the chances of those cyber criminals being able to intercept that invoice information. So the type of data and the mandatory details within those e-invoices are defined by a common standard. This is a common standard that's actually used around the world. It's called PEPL, but often you don't really need to know too much about sort of technical side because it's all built into your software. It's going to be seamless, but it basically means because the e-invoicing is built into the software, it means everybody's going to be using the same digital template based on the common standard, and that's why any software can understand it. It's also important to note, I think, Jen, that e-invoicing applies to only business to business and business to government transactions. So if you've got individual customers that aren't businesses or aren't government, then you will continue to invoice them as you do today.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting. So obviously, this has been something that you have built because of security reasons. Is that the biggest driver of this is, to help, I guess, eliminate or attempt to eliminate these scammers?
It's certainly one of the biggest considerations.
Yeah.
Obviously, trying to keep that business information safe is vitally important. But it's also about, helping businesses, more efficiently and better as well as safely run their businesses. Obviously, cash flow, this is a huge challenge, particularly for small businesses in the current environment. Some of the things that impact cash flow, of course, it's around payment times.
Yes.
And as I said, if you are eliminating some of those barriers to on-time payments, such as, mistakes that are being made through rekeying that invoice information into your software, if you can eliminate these things and have a system whereby that information is going directly into your receiver's software, then all it needs to do is be checked and approved and paid, which is obviously going to reduce the amount of time that often is taken as a result of those mistakes being made, the rekeying itself. And as a result, businesses will be paid on time, if not faster. It's also about really helping businesses, go digital. It helps support that transition.
Yeah.
In this case, where in terms of how businesses are going to be doing it differently, from what they're doing today, obviously they're going to be using today an email address to send the emailed PDF. But with e-invoicing, as you're going to be doing it through your software, you'll be using an ABN as the business identifier. And that's all built into, the way that you lay out that e-invoice is built into your software. So you will be providing all of the information that your receiver, your buyer needs to quickly be able to receive the information, check it, approve it, and pay it.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, I guess making things more secure and saving time and making business simpler, which I think is a real barrier for small business owners to a certain degree. A lot of small business owners have a fantastic idea, but they've never been accountants. They've never been, had bookkeeping experience and things like that. So anything that can help make their life simpler perhaps is a really good thing, which is what really interested me about this e-invoicing and how it worked to help small business owners for sure. So you've kind of explained, how it's different to today. Is there anything else that we need to touch on? Why is it important that we do this e-invoicing? I know we've touched on a couple of different things already, but, I guess, just to sort of go through again, why is it important that we look at a new system? Because for some small business owners, it's going to be a matter of something new, do I have to learn something new? But why is it so important that they look at a program such as this?
Well, again, Jen, it's very much about, making it easier for businesses to do business. We know that business are spending, particularly small businesses, are spending a lot of time on their invoicing processes. And we saw this, we did some research early last year, and we talked to around 100 small businesses who told us that they were on average spending 2 to 3 hours a week on their invoicing processes, which if you extrapolate that over a year, it works out at over 100 hours of invoicing, which at 8 or 9 hours a day, it works out to be anywhere between 9, 11 days of the year just spent on their invoicing processes. So we know that for small businesses particularly, if they start to digitize their processes, it's going to save them time, it's going to make them more efficient. And particularly with the invoicing, it's also going to help with some of those security aspects. And we all know, we saw it, the pandemic had a massive impact on so many Australian businesses, on businesses all around the world. But we saw as a result, Australian small businesses, turning to digital technology to adapt to these changing conditions, particularly around lockdown. Other research of ours showed that nearly 9 out of 10 Australian firms were adopting new technologies to improve their business continuity during the pandemic. They saw digital as critical for them surviving those 2 tough years. And e-invoicing just builds on this wave. It's just the next step in those small businesses' digital journeys. And again, I've already touched on some of the benefits, but there are some real benefits for businesses. And, I might just take the opportunity just to recap some of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to save you, time and money. When you receive an invoice, you're not going to need to rekey or scan it. You're not going to be fixing those errors as a result of that rekeying, because the information is going to show up automatically in your software. And when you send an e-invoice, you won't need to chase missing information, because I said that information that you've inputted into your invoice will be based on that common standard, that digital template, which ensures that you've got all of the correct information there. And you won't be chasing overdue or lost invoices, because of course they're going to be going straight into your trading partner's accounting software. So it's going to be very difficult for your trading partners to suggest that the invoice has been lost in the post. Or
yes, we didn't get that. I didn't open that email. That email got landed in junk or something like that. Will no longer be an excuse people can use.
Well, that's right. And of course, you're going to get paid on time, if not faster, because that whole invoicing process is going to be quicker because of those, eliminating the rekeying, fewer errors, and no lost invoices. And if, for example, if you are supplying to federal government, for example, federal government agencies across Australia have now become enabled to receive e-invoices. In fact, they were mandated to do it by the 1st of July 2022. They are now enabled, and if you send them a valid e-invoice, they will pay that invoice within 5 days. So obviously this is going to be great for small businesses' cash flow. And many state and local governments are also following suit. So e-invoicing isn't something that's coming, it's here. Most likely, if you're using one of the major accounting softwares, it's already in your software. So check it out, have a look in your software. It's probably going to be there. So as I say, if you are already using one of those major accounting software providers, you can register to connect, and you can start your e-invoicing. And I think I'll talk about it in more detail in a moment, but I just wanted to just finish up on the benefits. It's reliable and secure. I've talked about e-invoicing being safer than email, obviously because it's being sent, that data is being sent by that secure PEPL network by approved service providers. And this is a nice segue, I think, into the role of the ATO. The ATO approves those service providers that are building that e-invoicing functionality into your software. And it's us at the ATO that are ensuring those service providers adhere to our very strict security protocols. Which means, of course, that you can rely on that information that's being sent via the secure network. Importantly, and I talked at the top of your show, Jen, that people often go pale when you mention the ATO. Importantly, the ATO cannot see that invoice information that is going via the secure network. We don't have the legislation. There is no legislation that allows us to see what passes through that network. And we don't have the infrastructure because, of course, the infrastructure is built by those service providers into your products, your
so
software.
By approved service provider, do you mean like a Xero or a QuickBooks or something like that?
That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
So all of the major accounting software providers have already built e-invoicing functionality, both send and receive, into their software. But there are actually options, for those of your listeners who don't use software, there are e-invoicing, what we call service providers, because it's not software, that provide that e-invoicing functionality. And for those listeners, you'll be able to go to our website, ato.gov.au/e-invoicing. And we've got something called the PEPL, the e-invoicing ready list. And that's got a list of ATO approved service providers, including non-software providers, such as sort of web portals that people can log into. And they can then provide those service providers with their invoicing information, which those service providers will then turn into an e-invoice and then send to their suppliers, to their buyers, to their receivers through the secure network.
Beautiful. This all sounds great. I'm hoping that small business owners will listen to this and it will create the curiosity to go and have a bit of a look and, see how all this can work. So Tash, tell me, like, if listeners are listening, they think, okay, you've caught my eye or you've caught my ear, as it might be in a podcast. What do I do next? Like, how do they find out more? Or importantly, how do they sign up for this e-invoicing?
Sure. Look, it's pretty easy. We like to say you can get started in 3 easy steps.
Beautiful.
To coin the phrase. So first step, the first thing to do really is get ready. So for your listeners to start to think about how their current invoicing process need to change. For example, I mentioned the ABN as the business identifier as opposed to the email address. They can start adding their supplier ABNs to their customer records because, of course, the ABN is critical to e-invoicing. They can also start to think about their approval processes and other processes that might be impacted by e-invoicing. The next step is to register. If you're using, or if your listeners are using accounting software, as I already touched on, the good news is most of the software is already enabled.
Okay.
All they need to do is register to connect to the network through their software.
Okay.
The next bit of good news is in terms of cost, it's usually included in your subscription. For those of your listeners that don't use software, as I said, there are a number of free and or a number of solutions that are actually free or low cost. And again, they can visit our e-invoicing ready page at ato.gov.au/e-invoicing. And then step 3, all they need to do is start. It really is as simple as that. And look, with all things, when you want to, if you're a little bit unsure about these things, starting of e-invoicing doesn't need to be big bang. You can start as small or as big as you'd like, really. Start could be register to connect, and then talk to some of your, a couple of your trading partners, let them know that you are now using e-invoicing, get them to also register to connect through their software, and you can start to exchange e-invoices with each other. And then when you're comfortable, you can let all of your trading partners know that you're using e-invoicing, get them to start as well. And, off you go, really. You can start exchanging e-invoicing with all of your trading partners. So it's something that you can do at your own pace when you're ready. The chances are it's being built into your accounting software. Give it a go, talk to some of your trading partners. And then, as I say, just give it a go, see how it works, and then you can roll it out more broadly when you're ready.
Beautiful. I love that. That's such great advice. For me, it's kind of be an innovator, be the first. Like if you're listening to this and you thought to yourself, I've never heard of e-invoicing, I don't know what it is. Be an innovator, be one of the first, go do some research. If you are with Xero, go to Xero's help page and type in e-invoicing and see what advice they've got. Go to the ATO's website, which of course I will have the link in the show notes for that. But it was ato.gov.au/e-invoicing, and e-invoicing is all one word. I'll just say as well, there's no hyphen in that. And yeah, I guess as small business owners, we have a really big opportunity to, be an innovator, to be one of the first, within your scope of suppliers and things. Just, I guess, reiterating that it was for business to business and business to government. So it's not business to consumer. But I think when you look at the whole cybersecurity thing, I think it's time that as small business owners, we stood up and did our bit to try and combat that. Because, I think each one of us who are listening to this will know that there's at least one drops into our inbox every day, trying to scam us out of something. So I think it's important that we take all the steps we possibly can to, fight against these people who, like the numbers that you gave earlier were just phenomenal and so sad because small business owners are just, it's so hard in small business land now without being scammed out of, what did you say, 227 million, and most of it came from
million. Yes,
yeah,
you're right. Yes,
and most of it came from small
yes.
to medium businesses. And you can't help but think, as a small business owner myself, that is coming through not doing checks and balances, by being busy and just going, oh yes, there's that invoice, and paying it, rather than having that time, as you said when you spoke to a couple of small business owners yourself, where they've like at the last minute gone, ooh, that's a bit, I better, double think about that. So sometimes we're on autopilot, and that's where mistakes can be made. And of course, this tends to be taking away or eliminating that opportunity for mistakes to be made. So I think it's just a really great initiative, Tash, and I'm so happy that you've come on and had a bit of a chat to my audience about it.
Thanks, Jen. I really appreciate it. And look, as I say, it is something new, and often change is quite frightening. But, we're going through so much change. They say that, the only thing that remains the same is change.
Yes.
But your listeners you will remember when you were posting invoices, and then you made the change to emailing PDFs. Again, this is just the next step, in that invoicing process. It's got all of those real benefits that I've mentioned. You can start small and then just see how you go. But it's I think the other thing that's really critical about this is it's fabulous if you register to connect. But I think unless you have those conversations with your trading partners, it's like the old adage, build it in the hope that they will come. Obviously, if you've registered to connect, you need to be able to send those e-invoices to somebody. So this is really where having those discussions with your trading partners and getting them to register connect is so important, because then you'll be able to start sending them to each other.
Absolutely. And if they write back to you and say, I have no idea what you're talking about, get a copy of the link to this podcast episode and send that to them, and they can have a bit of a listen to our conversation and learn all about it as well. Tash, this has been so great. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat on the podcast. And I really hope that e-invoicing takes off and that, it's embraced for no other reason other than the fact that it will make business life a little bit simpler and, of course, safer.
Indeed. Look, my pleasure. All the very best. And give it a go.
Perfect. Thank you. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Tash. It's made you perhaps want to look into e-invoicing further, how it could affect you, how you could implement it into your business. Of course, you can find all the links in the show notes, again, at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/204. Otherwise, simply go to all the W's, ato.gov.au/business/e-invoicing. And e-invoicing, of course, is all one word, like I said earlier. New things are sometimes a little bit scary, but just like everything else, such as implementing the GST and learning social media and all of that, you will most likely need to use it and need to learn it. So I guess my question for you today is, my amazing listener, are you going to be a leader or a follower? Are you going to be an early adopter of this e-invoicing, a trailblazer as it may be, or are you going to sit back and perhaps be a waiter, just wait to see, who else implements it and how, get their opinion on it? But my hint to you would be an early adopter. Let's get into this. Like as Tash was talking about, it's going to make things simpler and safer. I'm not quite sure what more of an equation we want. Anyway, thanks, of course, for listening in. And again, you can go to the show notes to get the links, or you can go to ato.gov.au/business/e-invoicing. Otherwise, let's continue the chat in my Like-Minded Business Owners Facebook group. You can join by going to Facebook if you're not already there. I have some great guests coming up in the second half of the year, which I'm super excited to bring to you through Facebook Lives. Another great reason to come and join my community called Like-Minded Business Owners. But that's it. That's it for another podcast episode. I will see you next week on episode 205. Goodness knows what other surprises I have for you for guests. I think pretty chuffed that the Australian Taxation Office has included my podcast in e-invoicing week. It's a great conversation and I can't wait to see it being implemented through your business. But in the meantime, if we're not already hanging out on social, let's get social on social. You'll of course find me on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn, pretty much as at Jen Donovan. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peep, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.